Hey guys, it's Istebrak. Today I will be discussing my latest painting, which was quite an endeavor. It had been the first time really getting into a painting since my return. Studies do happen, and they aren't so. I don't plan on going all out on a study. Some studies are more relaxed, what I'm trying to explain, and some studies are a lot more intensive. And I just really go in. I try to render even eyelid wrinkles. I try to make sure all levels are perfect. And this one was a bit of a challenge because I was working with two references. One of the girls had like a Nubian, African-esque face, and then the other girl was Caucasian. And I was trying to pick and choose between, and I think I got a nice mix at the end. But what I want to talk about today is just how to push the render, how to really get into detail. And the answer is taking breaks in between the sessions that you do. So the first session, let's say it's a 6-hour process. The first 2 hours should have 12 hours in between. The first 2 hours and the second 2 hours should have 12 hours in between them, is kind of what I'm trying to say. That's how you push the render, revisiting it over a number of days. The reason that's important is because you are fighting against your threshold and patience with rendering. Each time you start a new painting, you're pushing yourself into a new level, and you burn out. You don't have the same finesse or the same accuracy as you did when you first started painting. You get tired. And a painting is an accumulation of choices. It's a problem solving. It's a riddle. It's a constant struggle back and forth. It's recursive. It's a beautiful, constant battle. And what I mean when I say, you have to keep revisiting it, is the choices you make today, you might have to correct at a later date. You will never really fully render a painting in the first session that you try. It's impossible because there are so many things to encapsulate in the first 2 hours that detail, of course, is going to sabotage your accuracy. So in the second set, after the first 12 hours have passed and you've entered, and this is just it could be 3 hours each session, it could be 5 hours each session, it really depends on the artist. For me, it's 2 to 3 hours each session. This particular painting, it was 2 hours first session, 5 hours second session, but I was messing around with my viewers on my stream, and the last session was about an hour or 2 or 3, I think. So the second 5-hour session is where most of the work happened. And once I got symmetry in place, I didn't have to apply detail, and in applying this push detail level, I throw off the symmetry. So when you evolve the socket of the eye, that fold in the eye, once that evolves into a real radial shading, into appropriate edge control, into the cast shadow from the eye socket onto the upper eyelid, that once that's developed, you have a new parameter within which the eye scale exists. And that's the danger with detailing and detailing too soon. You have to make sure that the starting point for all of these areas, and this is how you keep things proportionate. Of course, with flipping, that's always a given, flip your canvas. But to keep things proportionate, you have to make sure in your first 2 sessions, in your first 3-hour session, that you've made sure your rotation is perfect, because once you start detailing, scales change, positions change, new cast shadows become present. You have zoom out cast shadows made with large brush strokes and inward cast shadows made with small brush strokes from the crease on the upper eyelid. The cast shadow of the lashes on the eye, the intricate detail around the iris and the pupil, the blur necessary for the pupil. All these things are constantly growing. Things are expanding. It's like they're sucking in water as you add detail. So you are in danger of throwing off the rotation. That's one big risk of working with detail, is that you will change the painting. The painting does not look the same. So likeness is another big challenge of mine. So we have likeness as constantly changing in all the levels of this painting. And I didn't really I didn't have a goal for how I was going to work with references, when I was going to graduate from the reference and just make some choices on my own. I always make every single painting I've ever done, I've made choices on the eyelid on my own. I never really let the reference tell me what kind of eyelid to use, because an eyelid really is what makes the eye. And that's how, and the crease, and that's how I keep things personal to myself. That's why all my portraits pretty much look the same. At the end of the day, look like the same kind of almond shape. Those are decisions I make, but the nose, the mouth shape, the eyebrow shape can be just an accumulation of reference and personal preference. But when it comes to detailing the eyes, which I spend the most time on, the likeness is constantly shifting. Though I do have some control over eyelid decisions, at the end of the day, details are changing how much protrusion of the eyeball happens from the skull. So you have that sticking out of the eyeball that changes according to how much cast shadow you apply on the lower eyelid. The lower eyelid needs detailing with some kind of wrinkling or jumbling of skin, and that's how you apply detail to that area. So the question is, am I rendering anymore, or am I just applying detail? Am I applying detail or changing the whole painting? How ready am I to change how much of the painting? How much of the painting am I ready to change while applying detail? Am I comfortable with the current study version of this portrait, or am I uncomfortable with how unfinished it looks, and do I want to push it further into photographic detail? It's not going to, nothing is ever going to be at photorealism, especially if you're working without reference for the most part. You're always going to have that paintingness to it, and that's with the charm and the beautiful overlay of texture and brush footprint. But for me, a point comes while I paint where I'm like, this is not good enough and I need to push the detail. Another way to push detail is by applying texture to the eyebrow. And we're doing this, of course, with the awareness that we don't want to throw off the focal point, which is the eyes and the pupil and the gaze. So this detail aspect of applying eyebrow up into the hairlines, detail from the eyebrow, and lowering eyebrow, shrinking the size of the brush for the eyebrow. How much of that are we going to cut down in order to do the hairline? How many details around the face am I going to maintain? How much detailing am I doing in eye brush size and edge sharpness, because that's a way to detail? And then how much contrast am I bringing in? So the ways to detail, the ways to push a reference are by shrinking your brush and bringing in little strokes of hair or lashes, or thinning out the lash line, or bringing in tiny wrinkles. They're sharpening the edges, the edge of the nose, the edge of the crease on another crease or a wrinkle crease, the edge of the eyebrow hairs, the edge of the eyebrow itself where the last hair of the eyebrow sits. Then there's the contrast, which is how much white am I bringing in, how much detail am I bringing in. I canceled out the speculars in the eye. So as you evolve the painting from study into fully polished render, you are doing this with all these different ways to detail. If it was colored, you're also questioning saturation to create focal point. So pretty much all in all, everything else is under rendered when it comes to the mouth and the nose. The nose does get rendered. And then we end up getting the balance back into the focal point, just because not a lot happens in the mouth or the nose. A lot of students make the mistake of thinking that pushing a render in a portrait means creating the detail of the lips. That's a big mistake. Do not do that. You don't need, other than the core shadows of the cylindrical geometric anatomy, you don't need upper lip detail, because that's not something we notice when we talk to a person. So what do I push then in detail when it comes to the mouth? Really ask yourself, how much of the mouth are you looking at when you're talking to someone? We're usually looking at their eyes. The things I notice are inner corner, color of the eyes, the shadow of the eyeball, right above the lower eyelid. Those are the things that I'm actually focusing on when I'm detailing. Detailing is kind of magical because it just happens on its own, but it has to happen in between sessions of painting. You can't do it and expect the painting to kind of get better and better as you go along. The first session will get better and better, but only in the larger subjects of the painting process. That's the kind of stuff where you're dealing with the transfer of values radially into upper and lower sections of the portrait. all kinds of radial shades in the chin, maintaining the spherical oval shape of the head, casting the shadow of the eye socket. But when it comes to detailing and focusing this much on the process, that's not something that you can really achieve or even have the mental capacity to consider when it comes to pushing the render in the first session. And the reason why rendering happens on its own is because it's a constant etching away at every finite detail that comes up to you. Anything that looks off or wrong, or if you jump back to your reference, you'll notice new details in the reference that you didn't notice when you were first starting out, because again, you were overwhelmed by the information provided and by the image in your mind. They're constantly fighting each other, and so you're just trying to capture a general representation before you start capturing a detailed representation. Detail in a portrait also makes the face look more human, looks more realistic. The less detail we have, the more cartoony or Barbie doll or cookie cutter the portrait will look. So that tiny little wrinkle, that tiny little bump that we capture in a nose or in a mouth, obviously not wrinkles in a mouth though, but the bumps, the detail of the Cupid's bow, all of these things are what create detail in that area, and they are things that keep the face looking organic and believable. So look for edges. What do we look for when we're trying to detail a speck? Well, we look for edges. Look for edges anywhere they exist. It could be the slightest little change of surface area that produces a new edge. It could be the radial shade of a lower eyelid. Like you'd think there's no crease there and it's just one solid value. But there are all kinds of varieties of value just on the lower eyelid itself. There is the lower half spherical shadow of the eyeball. The white of the eye has a core shadow in there, and it's put obviously directing away from the light. There's the blur of the iris in the pupil on the white of the eye to create the feeling that the eye is wet. That's a detail. There is the cast shadow, obviously, of the lash line. Very, very big detail. Another big detail you guys don't notice, and by detail, again, I don't only mean small brush. Detail is things that make it better as a whole. Another detail is how dark the eyeball is in comparison to the face. So the eyeball might not be pure white. So that's a contrast decision that you're making that makes the eye socket feel more realistic, which makes the painting feel more organic. Of course, there's the detail of eyebrow hairs, but not just that, the direction in which they grow. So hairs sometimes are wispy and grow upward into the arc of the eyebrow. There's the fact that the edges of the eyebrow are not black. They actually have less concentration of hair, and get lighter towards the end. That's a detail. The detail on the eyeball is the reflection of the room around the character. So I have a very, very sharp reflection of a nearby surface area. I just made it up. It doesn't matter. As long as it's curved along the shape of the eyeball, it's a valid detail to place in, and it made the eyes look more vibrant. There's the detail of newly developing wrinkles on the outsides of the eyes. So as I age and see my wrinkles develop in the mirror, I start aging my portraits. So I have a feeling I'll be painting like some very old people very soon. So on the outside edges, under the lower eyelid, beneath the outer corner, just around the longitude line of the eyebrow arc, are some wrinkles that just sit there always. Then there's the constant laugh line wrinkles that the character might have. There's the bump above the nose. There's the cylindrical shadow, the halfway shadow of the upper lip. Even though the upper lip is darker by pigment, we still have an extra little radial shade of that upper lip on top of the lower lip. So the upper lip has its own halfway core shadow, half the cylinder. Then there's the edge of the lip on the lower lip, and then there's the cavity if the mouth is slightly open. And then there's the reflection of the lower lip on the upper lip, just on the edges of the upper lip. Then there's the lower lip, and the fact that the lower lip actually exists wider than the typical, where you expect the mouth to end, the typical place where we end it, the upper light block of value on the cylinder of the lower lip extends under the lip corners and further. The mouth is much wider than you think. It's just lips are not the end of the mouth. The mouth is much wider than the lips. Then there's the fact that the hairline is completely blurred because it's representing all the tiny little hair. So you're creating detail but not with painting every single hair. By blurring along the hairline, you're creating the feeling that there is tiny little hairs growing along the hairline. There's the core shadow of the chin. Then there is extension of the lower bags of the eyes. Really amazing tool to bring in some believable organic signature in the portrait. And then there's the upper lip mustache. Very, very big detail. Then there's the edge of the nostril. The edge of the nostril is a very, very important way to bring in detail in the nose without overdoing it. So you may think, every time you render, you may think, detailing is about adding freckles. It's not that at all. It's not about drawing every single little lash. As you can see, I barely added lashes, but I made the detail happen. And all of these things that I mentioned are either an edge or a contrast, and only some of them are really shrinking your brush as slow as possible. You can see the wrinkles on her eyes. Only some of these are shrinking the brush. Most of them are about edges, about the shine, that wetness shine on the inner corner of the eye that's also radial. So you're always going to be radial shading. It's just that your mouse shrinks and your cursor shrinks, your brush shrinks, and you zoom in for more little bumps and tiny little elevation changes. That's pushing render. Pushing render isn't about adding more detail in the hair. The hair is just a big block of black when it comes to my studies because I don't like over-representing detail in the hair. So really just look out for this. Look out for this in your paintings. It's so incredibly important to know how to push a render and how to make an illustration feel complete, not leaving behind any brushstroke tails. And that's something that a lot of students feel like are mystified. They're mystified by it. How do I paint but not leave behind any? How well do you render so well? There's no imprint of your brush anywhere. The painting feels complete. How do you blend like that? Well, there's the smudge brush, and the smudge brush helps me graduate into a new representation of the skin surface. So once I feel like the skin surface has been appropriately blended, obviously blocked in way earlier on with a healthy amount of core shadow presence, I'll feel like the skin is ready to accept some detail. But it's never in freckles. It's never in anything like that. It's in the tiny bumps, the tiny little extra bumps we have on the corners above the lips. So you know the little corners of the lips and the radial shading there? Well, that little corner, that little button also has a bump, a mountainous bump around it. And then that, by using smudge tool and zooming all the way out, I can appropriately calculate how much lightness I need around the mouth like a frame, but not enough to exit the beard shadow that we need there in order to keep the face looking three-dimensional in its environment. And then there's expression detail. So that's a very big one. A lot of paintings that are painterly, that stay early, have a generally defocused expression in the eyes. They're not focused. The eyes don't seem like they're looking at anything. That's something that I notice with studies. With polished pieces, the eyes are looking at you. There is a back and forth. This person is looking. You're being moved because you're looking at something. So bringing the eyes in closer together and flipping your canvas will help, not the eyes themselves, but the pupil and the iris should be focused inward. Bringing those in together will really, really help you create expression detail. Then there's the fact that she has a bit of a scorn in her face, something like a gaze that's a little bit, very much, a lot of it stern and fierce, but I don't like using that word, fierce. But there's also a delicacy. There's a bit of a raise in her inner eyebrow. When I added detail on the inner eyebrow, and I brought in those little wispy ones, little wispy hairs on the inside of the eyebrow, what that did was that it created this extra little, it's like a sprinkle of desperation in the expression, like she's looking at something that she wants. That's detail. Hair, I didn't really try to focus too much on the nature, the style of the hair, but hairstyle makes her look a little bit more reserved, but she has those wispy hairs at the start to make it feel like what she wants isn't necessarily the subtlety in the way I've organized the hair but made some of it messy is exactly the same thing I'm doing with the portrait. She looks stern, she looks put together, but there's also something wild about her. And the wildness also has to do with the fact that the eyebrows are not overplucked. Yet another detail. So we consider everything when we're painting professionally. When you look at a professional painting, everything has been considered. Everything has a purpose. That is detail in production. That is detail in planning. The slight distortion of the cast shadow off the nose and the hardly perceived, like perceptible, is that the word? Cast shadow tail of the eye socket is also a representation of the time of day, which is a bit more dim, overcast. And yeah, the painting may look depressing, but that's kind of where I was going with it. I was trying to represent something that wasn't always comfortable, isn't always happy. That's kind of what I do with my portraits. I don't always try to make the viewer uncomfortable, but at the same time, they should not be comfortable looking at this person. Something about this person they're looking at should change the way, or do something to them. Another detail is how high her shoulder is. She's kind of flirting. She's raising her either it's in innocence or it's in flirtation or unintentional sexiness. I raised her shoulder up just a little bit. And I'm a dancer. I dance as like my second favorite hobby, sometimes my favorite hobby, even above art. So when I bring in any body part, it usually really has to represent something that a dance can do, or a dance would do as well if the shoulder was moved that way. Something that in dance has meaning. I eventually got rid of the long hair because it looked a little bit too film noir. I feel like film noir is an overused aesthetic, and I try to move away from it because I am painting black and white, and I don't necessarily use film noir. So compare film noir values to my paintings. My paintings are much more exposed. Film noir had low res, high exposure, really, really over softened, sharpened cast shadows. So I try not to think film noir. I try to think like natural lighting. Film noir had very unnatural lighting all the time, and resulting in either extreme exposure but in only certain areas with really pitch black contrast. I don't like pitch black contrast because as a fundamental and as a technical, it works like a technical, you get something from it but not without sacrificing fundamentals. That's kind of what I think about film noir. It's deliberate use of black and white, where grays are where all the beautiful radial shades exist, and I'm all about the blending and the radial shading and the management of edges. Then there's the lower lash line. So that's a really scary one. I want to talk about that one. You guys tend to overdo that. Even one of the references I was using had really overdone makeup. So be careful with makeup of the lower lash line. What that will do is weigh the eye down a little bit and cancel out the prominence of the upper eyelid shadow. So sometimes we do have eyeshadow up there for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of stuff stacking on a lot of stuff up there. The eyelid, the eye socket, the eyebrow bone, the hair of the eyebrow, the hair of the lash on the white of the eye. So there's a lot going on that will cause black to exist there, and you don't want anything to contest that. And then you'll just end up with cat eye makeup, which was my last study, and I don't want to constantly do that because as a student, when I was a student, and I'm still a student, I used to hide a lot of anatomy behind makeup because I was too scared to try it. There's a lot that goes into managing detail, and there's a lot that you might sacrifice if you misrepresent detail and make the mistake of thinking that detail is just about shrinking your brush. Detail is the culmination of planning all the aspects of the painting, from the intrinsic to the very, very objective values that you're dealing with as a technical piece of volume and form and space. So shadows and how perfectly executed they are, all the way down to what her hair is saying about her personality. That's really what detail is all about. I would love to see you guys try some detail in this month's assignment. I want to see how you guys push the detail, and I hope today's lesson works as a kind of intro for this month's critique hour. We have a lot going on when it comes to portraits and character design, and your portfolio and portraits, they are all the really linked, they equate to each other in value and prominence in your portfolio. Character design and portraiture are very, very important So please make sure that you remember to plan for these things, but at the same time, a lot of it can't really be planned, like the expression, the attitude, what you're representing about the female subject here, this actress. And some of it has to be you kind of following your instinct and making sure that the emotion you're representing comes back. Because, yeah, it may seem like a very abstract, hocus pocus, hipster thing to say, oh, what's the emotion of the character? It'll affect. No, it really does, because it helps me decide how dark the eye socket will go, how much makeup I'm bringing in, how stern her eyebrows are, how low they are, how thick they have to be in order for it to look like a strong female. Not too concerned about classical beauty, but at the same time so classically beautiful. It really is all linked together, and while you're painting, allow yourself to kind of feel what's happening as the audience yourself. Try to give the audience what they want at the same time, because while you're directing and creating this piece, you are also seeing the final result as it happens. And sometimes you'll notice that there is a lack. There is something that's drawing your eye away. A shoulder could go just a little bit higher. A chin could just be a little bit darker. And it could go back to anatomy, or it could go back to presentation and staging. But that's really how there's a lot that I mentioned in technical stuff, but I also don't want you to lower the value on the non-technical stuff, the dance stuff, the artistic stuff. That's where really we get to explore. So if a lot of people look at my gallery and say Istebrak does only studies, she's boring. Well, there's a lot going on that takes a little bit more detail to appreciate. The storytelling is in a lot. I tell it through expression, and through hairstyle, and through flat eyebrows, and through masculine features. I do a lot of storytelling in my studies, and of course when we have a big illustration and we have costume and we have magical forces and we have clouds and mountains, storytelling is so much more easy. But here it's in the details, and today is all about pushing the details. And so when your main focus is in the details, that's where your story is going to be invested. And that's why I want you to focus on that intrinsic spiritual value of what you're saying in the painting, that mysticism, that appealing magical element in how angry she looks, but how delicate her mouth also looks. It really is something fantastic to me. It's what captivates me. It's what keeps me going back to art, storytelling through human portraits, through features, through expressions. And I think nothing is more interesting than a human face, because there's so much going on, so many secrets. And when I look at someone, and I'm kind of known for this, I tend to stare and try to break down what I'm seeing. I really do understand a lot about what people are hiding or saying when they have an expression on an eyebrow kind of twitches in one direction. I understand that moment may have been emotionally stirring for them, or that moment may have been an angry moment, or a delicate moment, or a vulnerable moment, or insecurities coming through. That's really how I tell stories. It's in the psychology of the portraiture. So yeah, I am like going crazy on stream and talking to people, but there really is a storytelling happening and behind the curtains. And I paint and make sure that her mouth, her nose, her eyes, her eyebrows, her hair, and the lighting in the scene all tell the same story. And that's really what guides my hand around the detail expected of me. And that's when I stop. I stop when the detail feels like it's satisfied the storytelling. So when it comes to being more aware of the kind of personality you're representing, sometimes you have to be aware that you're doing a lot of self-reflection and self-portraiture. A lot of the expressions that I work in and represent in my art, and if this is all too much psychology hocus pocus, feel free to stop the video now. But for me, it's very, very important, and I think it's good to have some insight on how, the backdrop is. Some of the expressions that I don't do in a week, that I repress, are the expressions that I try to explore in my portraits. There's a lot of repression that happens day to day. There's a lot of things we want to say that we don't say. There's a lot that we feel that, when we're judging someone or we're looking at something and we want to say something about it, but we know either for propriety or just maintaining some composure or lack of personalization in the situation. You can't really say what's on your mind. For me, art is about saying what you can't say with words when you need to say it, or moments of cowardice that I've had in the week that I want to satisfy or redeem myself with. There's also the fact that I'm just also sometimes when I'm doing a portrait and I'm pushing the detail, I'm just technically flexing. I really want to see how far I can go in finding what may be missing. Sometimes photographs have things I don't see that they're there, but I just don't have the skill to witness them and reproduce them in my painting. That's my personal struggle right now, trying to find what I don't see. And there are things I don't see that I see in the paintings of better artists, and I'm wondering, what am I missing? There's something there that I just don't get. And that currently is my process at the moment. Managing color is something that I really am looking forward to. But every time I jump into color, I feel like, have I really pushed the values as far as possible? And if I'm messing around too much with color layers on Photoshop, then it feels more like a collage and not really, again, focusing on the things that I would have brought to detail if it was just black and white. Restriction creates innovation. Restriction is a beautiful breeding ground for rebellion. So when we are either, sometimes I rebel with a ton of color and I just want to use color for everything, and there's not a single black piece. That's what I did in the summer. This last summer I used a lot of colored pencils, but sometimes limiting my color and allowing only black will bring out this level of skill that I would not have been able to represent if I had color. Color would have satisfied me and I would not even be aware of it. And that's it really. Those are my thoughts on the matter. It's a lot to manage, and there's an inward psychology for what the choices were and why I made them, and then there's the technical knowledge aspect for the decisions that I made. My favorite part of this entire painting, I would say, are the eyebrows. I love the shape of her eyebrows. I love how they're straight and flat, but she still has an eyebrow arc, and that's what I love the most about this. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in Critique Hour. We're all back. Everything's back to normal October 1st and onward. Hopefully there's never going to be another break like this one. Smooth sailing and no more distractions, no more medical limitations. And I will also see you guys in this month's Critique Hour for apprentices. I look forward to seeing your portraits and how far you guys have pushed your detail. I love you guys very much. I'll see you guys next month. Bye.